Venezuela strongly rejects the U.S. government's threat to impose a naval blockade on the nation, vowing to defend its rights to free trade, navigability, free development, sovereignty, and national independence. Brazilian Congress passed a bill on Wednesday that could reduce the jail penalties for those involved in the 2022 coup d'état, including former President Jair Bolsonaro, who is currently facing 27 years in prison. In the Gaza Strip, the humanitarian crisis worsens amid continuous Israeli aggressions and harsh winter conditions. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Sophie Fernandez from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Stay with us. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro ratified Venezuela's sovereignty over its oil and rejected the claims of the United States, emphasizing that the Venezuelan state will not subordinate its territory or its wealth to colonial governments. During the commemorative ceremony for the 195th anniversary of the death of the liberator Simón Bolívar, President Nicolás Maduro assured that Venezuela will not continue to trade its oil and natural resources, in strict compliance with the Constitution and the decree of the liberator Simón Bolívar, emphasizing that the country's resources belong exclusively to the Venezuelan people. In turn, he asserted that the majority of the U.S. people disagree with the aggression and threats that U.S. imperialism continues to level against Venezuela and the Caribbean. In this sense, the president reiterated his full confidence in the people's commitment to enforce, in perfect civil-military police union, their historical rights over their wealth and national territory.
There are things that call for reflection. How precisely, at the 200 years of the birth of Bolívar, it is fulfilling the prophecy of great Pablo Neruda, who said, Bolívar awakens every 100 years. When the people awakens, and our people, our beautiful, great people, awoke for never to go asleep again and to stay in vigil, permanent and constant, in permanent fight. It is fabulous and magic, the history of our Latin America and the Caribbean. It is a history that is unique, that will never be able to be turned off or silenced or manipulated or tainted. It is wonderful, the history of our Venezuela. Always rebellious and always creating process.
The Venezuelan government also sent a letter to the President of the United Nations Security Council to call for an urgent meeting of the Security Council in light of recent U.S. threats. The Venezuelan Foreign Minister opened the letter with, "I am writing to you in your capacity as President of the United Nations Security Council to denounce a serious attack on the peace, security, and stability of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, as well as the Latin American and Caribbean region as a whole." It continues, "In the history of Venezuela, never before has a head of state and/or government of a foreign power come up with the deranged idea that Venezuelan national territory, including its oil fields and other assets, belongs to them. This illusion is compounded by the ultimatum that if Venezuela does not surrender to their will, our nation will be attacked by their military forces." The foreign minister added that gunboat diplomacy to extort peoples belongs to an era that humanity has already overcome. If the Security Council ignores the crime of aggression, which is evident to the world, it would be accepting the destruction of the entire collective security system of the United Nations, which has cost people so much to build over the past 80 years. Meanwhile, the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, ALBA-TCP, categorically rejects the U.S. declaration on its decision to totally and completely block oil tankers to Venezuela and its intentions to steal its natural resources. In a statement, Alba denounced before the peoples of the world the serious, reckless, and supremacist threat made on December 16, 2025 by the President of the United States, Donald Trump, against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. This declaration, which continues a total blockade and the forced appropriation of Venezuelan resources, constitutes an act of international aggression that grossly and flagrantly violates the Charter of the United Nations, international law, and the most basic principles of coexistence among states. The communique also states, "The peoples and governments of ALBA express our full and unrestricted solidarity with the President Nicolás Maduro, the Bolivarian government, and the Venezuelan people, and we warn that any aggression against Venezuela is an aggression against all of our America. We call on the peoples of the world and social movements to reject this criminal threat and defend the right of peoples to decide their own destiny. We reaffirm that our America is not a colony or the backyard of any empire. Venezuela is not alone. Free peoples will defend peace, sovereignty, and dignity against any attempt at domination." Moving on to Honduras, the Libre Party called on its supporters to take to the streets to defend the will of the people expressed at the ballot box in the face of allegations of fraud. The leadership of the ruling Libre Party, at an event held at the presidential palace and attended by senior party officials, demanded the opening of more than 19,000 ballot boxes for a vote-by-vote recount. In this context, President Xiomara Castro, together with the general coordinator of the Libre Party, Manuel Zelaya, denounced electoral fraud due to the interference of the United States and called on their supporters to mobilize peacefully throughout the country.
And by convoking you, it is precisely for us to be able to manifest ourselves in a peaceful way, in the way that we are used to, in a peaceful way, because the democracy is defended standing, not in silence.
In this scenario, presidential candidate Rixi Moncada described the elections as an electoral coup and demanded that they be annulled, considering them the most fraudulent in the country's history.
We all know what happened on Sunday the 30th. On Sunday the 30th, those who dictated the order from there with their allies here, they gave a brutal hit, electoral coup, because they want to disappear the party and the political force and Zelaya and Melism, and they want to disappear the cause, the essence of this party. To them we say, today, 17 days after the elections, that we are standing and fighting and that we won't rest in our just demands for what, and you know it, and you have also repeated all of these days, to annul the elections. The elections, the most cheated elections of the history of Honduras.
And now we have a short break coming up. But first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. On Wednesday, the Brazilian Congress approved a bill that could reduce the penalties of those involved in the 2022 coup, including former President Jair Bolsonaro. The bill, which had been approved last week in the Chamber of Deputies, passed with 48 votes in favor and 25 against. The measure seeks to reduce the effective prison time for those prosecuted for crimes against the democratic rule of law, including former President Jair Bolsonaro and other coup plotters who tried to override the will of the people. The regulation could reduce Bolsonaro's penalty, who is currently facing 27 years in prison, to as little as 2.5 years. For his part, Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has the power to veto the bill, but in the event that he does, the bill could be taken to Congress once again. Moving on to Cuba, the central bank announced Wednesday the implementation of a new exchange market structure, introducing a daily floating exchange rate segment for currencies, alongside two existing fixed rates. Central Bank President Juana Lilia Delgado Portals said that having different foreign exchange rates causes problems, encourages informal activity, and makes it hard to track economic activity through banks and taxes. The authorities aim to create conditions for gradual temporary foreign exchange market transformations. A new three-segment structure was designed as a transitional scheme to avoid a sharp, disruptive devaluation. The reform aims to gradually recover the convertibility of the Cuban peso and move towards monetary conversions. In other news, on Wednesday, the University of Buenos Aires warns of a 30% cut in the budget for the university hospitals in 2026, as outlined in the draft budget of President Javier Milei's administration. With 132 votes in favor, 97 against, and 19 abstentions, Argentina's Chamber of Deputies approved the controversial 2026 budget bill, which repeals the disability emergency law and the university funding system. The University of Buenos Aires noted that this will impact top hospitals which serve over 700,000 patients a year. The institution expressed its rejection of the government's initiative to repeal the university financing law and denounced the decline in wages of its workers, whose portions in power has been halved in 2 years. And moving on to Ecuador, on Wednesday, the government activated the Emergency Operations Committee, COE, to monitor the AH3N2 flu and the circulation of other respiratory viruses in the country. The Ministry of Public Health reported that the COE held a meeting Wednesday to analyze the current epidemiological situation and plan actions. The meeting was chaired by Minister of Environment and Energy Inés Manzano and attended by several members of the executive, including Vice President of the Republic Maria Jose Pinto, who oversees health. The Vice President reported that more than 250,000 people have already been vaccinated against the flu in the country, including 100,000 children under the age of 6 belonging to the priority group. Meanwhile, the Peruvian government has submitted a bill that extends, for the fifth consecutive time, the temporary permit for informal miners to continue extracting gold and copper until the end of 2026. The decision came after a day of protests in the capital, where hundreds of miners marched to the area surrounding the Congress in Lima to demand the continuation of their operations. President Heri, who previously affirmed his support for this extension, also has 15 days to sign the law or return it to Parliament with comments. Since 2016, successive Peruvian governments have systematically extended the deadline due to their inability to register and monitor thousands of miners.
The struggle of all Peruvians and all miners is a struggle that we have won. It doesn't matter if it's 1 year. It doesn't matter, but remember, authorities, congressmen and government, formalization does not depend on us, it depends on you. The Energy Committee's substitute text, which amends Legislative Decree 1293 declaring the formalization of artisanal and small-scale mining activities to be of national interest, was approved in a second vote.
We have a second short break coming up. Before, we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There, you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, but we'll be right back with more from the South. Don't go away. The death toll rises in the Gaza Strip amid continuous Israeli aggressions and harsh winter conditions that exacerbate the humanitarian crisis. According to the Ministry of Health, 1 Palestinian was killed and 11 were injured in the latest Israeli aggression, while many mothers remain trapped beneath the rubble or stranded in the streets as rescue crews struggle to work. Furthermore, the tragic winter has left 12 people dead, 11 of them from collapsed structures and 1 of them of freezing. For his part, the Gaza Civil Defense warned that severe winter weather has sharply worsened the humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip, triggering building collapses, mass flooding, and further civilian deaths. So far, Israel has committed 394 ceasefire violations since the October 2025 ceasefire agreement. Two Indian officials recently made remarks about pollution, which has increased frustration among residents who claim that policymakers are unwilling to acknowledge the severity of India's air quality crisis. Environment Minister Bhupender Yadav told Parliament that New Delhi had seen 200 good air quality days. However, pollution experts and opposition leaders said he overlooked the worst months. Environmentalists and data experts claim that India's air quality measurement standards are more lenient than those of countries such as the United States, causing moderate readings to often mask dangerous pollution levels. India's government air quality standards are also less stringent than the World Health Organization guidelines. In other news, Russia and Iran announced a joint initiative to create a global group against unilateral sanctions, which they consider illegal and a violation of international law. The proposal was presented by Foreign Ministers Sergei Lavrov and Abbas Araghchi during a press conference in Moscow, as part of their commitment to strengthening bilateral strategic cooperation. Lavrov stated that Moscow and Tehran agreed on the need to create an international group against sanctions and stressed that these measures have a negative political and economic impact on countries affected. The Russian minister also highlighted the active cooperation between the two countries on strategic projects and expressed Russia's willingness to join mediation efforts in Iran requested it. Moving now to the United Kingdom, resident doctors in England are going on strike for 5 days to demand better pay, a move that threatens to disrupt public health services due to the current flu outbreak. The strike, called by the British Medical Association, began on Wednesday morning after talks between the British Medical Association and the government to avoid it fail. This is the 14th strike by this group since March 2023. Resident doctors, who make up almost half of the medical staff in English hospitals, are demanding a pay rise of more than 20%. In addition to the salary issue, the British Medical Association has linked the protests to the shortage of specialized training places, arguing that thousands of qualified doctors cannot find work despite the long waiting lists in the National Health Services. The 27th edition of the Winter Festival in Harbin, China, will mark the opening of Ice and Snow World, the world's largest ice and snow theme park. The space, which covers 400,000 cubic meters, features ice sculptures and attractions that celebrate the country's culture and includes impressive illuminated structures, activities such as leading, ice skating, and interaction with artificial intelligence, as well as rest areas and gastronomy. The park will be open until the end of February 2026, and local authorities hope the event will boost tourism and promote the art of ice, offering a unique experience for visitors. And Mexico City lights up with the Winter Lights program, a massive cultural event that will fill the capital with music and art during the December holidays. Mexican authorities reported that the activities will continue until January 6 in the Zócalo and 15 other locations, with the participation of 76 musical groups of various genders. The initiative seeks to decentralize cultural offerings so that the celebrations reach all communities beyond the historic center. Highlights include a 150-meter tunnel of light, a monumental nativity scene, and forums with pastorelas and storytellers. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We're on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Sophie Fernandez. Thank you for watching.